They are young, they are fearless, and they are angry. In the streets of Nepal, a generation is rising louder than ever before. Tear gas fills the air. Police clash with students, and hashtags turn into battle cries. But what could push thousands of young people, teenagers, students, job seekers, to risk their lives in protest? This is not just another rally. This is the sound of a generation that refuses to be silent. For decades, Nepal has been a land of promises unfulfilled. Corruption eats away at opportunities. Jobs are scarce, even for the educated. And while ordinary citizens struggle to survive, the privileged flaunt their wealth online. Videos of politicians' children, known as Nepo kids, living in luxury, while the youth suffer, became the spark. It was a wound reopened, proof of the inequality everyone knew, but few dared to challenge. Gen Z had enough. Unlike generations before them, Nepal's youth fight in a new way.
Their battleground is digital. Their weapons are memes, reels, and
Their battleground is digital. Their weapons are memes, reels, and online anger found a voice. Hashtags like #NEPOKids spread like wildfire, exposing the privilege of the powerful and uniting thousands behind a single cause. But the system struck back at, attempting to silence this digital rebellion. In 2025, the government banned TikTok and moved to restrict social media. They believed this would silence dissent. Instead, it did the opposite. The ban became the spark that ignited Nepal's streets. From Kathmandu to Pokhara, thousands marched, demanding justice. What began online turned into the biggest youth uprising in Nepal's recent history.
These protests are not just about social media.
These protests are not just about social media. They are about dignity, about opportunity, about survival in a country where the system feels rigged against the young. This is the untold story of Nepal's Gen Z. They are angry. Why they are fighting, and why this might just be the beginning of a revolution. Welcome to their story. Chapter 1. The Breaking Point. Every movement begins with a breaking point. For Nepal's Gen Z, that moment had been building for years, until it finally burst into the streets. The frustration wasn't sudden. It was layered. It was deep. And it was personal. Imagine spending years in school, working day and night to graduate, only to find there are no jobs waiting. Nepal's youth unemployment rate has remained stubbornly high. Every year, thousands leave the country, seeking work in the Gulf, Malaysia, or India because their homeland cannot give them opportunities. For many, this isn't just about jobs. It's about broken promises. Promises made by politicians during every election. Promises of development, progress, hope, all fading into disappointment. And while ordinary youth struggle, those in power continue to live untouched by the realities faced by the majority. Corruption is not new in Nepal. It has become a shadow over daily life. From government contracts to simple paperwork, corruption seeps into everything. And Gen Z, the most connected, most aware generation in the country, sees it all. They scroll through feeds filled with stories of bribery, scandal, and misuse of funds. And then, right beside it, they see videos of politicians, children known as Nepo kids, driving luxury cars, partying in foreign cities, flaunting a life of privilege, bought with the public's money. The contrast is painful. For a generation that values fairness and accountability, this inequality feels like betrayal. At first, the anger stayed online. TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter became outlets for frustration. Gen Z mocked the hypocrisy with memes. They created viral reels, exposing corruption. They shared hashtags that connected thousands of voices across cities and villages. The internet became a place where everyone could finally say out loud what they had always whispered, that the system was broken, and they were tired of being ignored. But digital anger does not stay digital forever. Soon, the hashtags became placards. The memes became chants. What began on screens spilled onto the streets. From Kathmandu to Pokhara, young people who had never protested before marched shoulder to shoulder, demanding justice and accountability. For them, this was not about politics. It was about survival. But about reclaiming a future they believed was being stolen from them. And so, the breaking point arrived. A generation tired of unemployment. A generation tired of corruption. A generation tired of seeing privilege flaunted while they struggled for dignity. Nepal's Gen Z had reached the edge. They decided not to stay silent any longer. This was not just another protest. It was the beginning of a youth-led movement that would shake the foundations of power in Nepal. Chapter 2. The Digital Generation in the Past. Protests needed posters, marches, and long speeches. But Nepal's Gen Z discovered something different. A protest could begin with just a meme, a TikTok, or a viral hashtag. This is the story of how a digital generation learned to fight back, one post at a time. Unlike the generations before them, Nepal's Gen Z grew up with smartphones in their hands. From their teenage years, they learned to scroll, swipe, and create. The internet was not just entertainment, it was education, connection, and identity. When they felt ignored in classrooms or silenced in politics, they found freedom in their feeds. And with that freedom came power, the power to tell their own stories, in their own voices. It began with memes, sarcastic, funny, but brutally honest memes that exposed corruption and hypocrisy. When politicians made empty promises, memes mocked them. When scandals broke, memes spread faster than news reports. Laughter became a weapon sharp enough to cut through lies, powerful enough to unite strangers online. For Gen Z, memes weren't just jokes. They were resistance in disguise. Soon, memes evolved into movements. A single hashtag shared enough times could spark conversations across the country. Hashtag enough is enough. Hashtag corruption-free Nepal. Hashtag youth for change. These weren't just words on a screen. They were rallying cries. Hashtags became digital banners, connecting Kathmandu to Biratnagar, Pokhara to Japa. They gave every young Nepali a chance to feel part of something bigger, something unstoppable. And then came TikTok, the stage where Gen Z truly found its voice. Through 15-second reels, they told stories that traditional media ignore. A young graduate spoke about unemployment. A farmer's son revealed the struggles of rural life. A frustrated student exposed corruption in colleges. These videos spread faster than any official statement, reaching millions in hours. For the first time, ordinary youth could challenge authority, not with violence or speeches, but with creativity. But perhaps the most powerful tool of all was live streaming. When protests hit the streets, phones were raised high, capturing every chant, every clash, every act of injustice. No longer could power hide behind silence. Every baton charge, every voice of resistance, every demand for justice was broadcast in real time. Gen Z had blurred the line between digital and physical protest. Their phones were not just gadgets. They were shields. They were weapons. They were the reason the world could no longer look away. This was not just a generation scrolling for fun. This was a generation turning technology into resistance. The digital world had become their battlefield, their classroom, and their megaphone. And through it, Nepal's Gen Z found a new kind of strength that no government could silence. Chapter 3. Clash, Resistance, and the Future in 2025. Nepal's streets erupted. What started as digital outrage turned into a full-scale movement. Tear gas, protest marches, viral hashtags, and an unrelenting young generation confronting the system. This was the moment Nepal's Gen Z refused to be ignored. But the story is not just about anger, it's about courage, defiance, and the hope of a nation reborn. The government, seeing the digital storm as a threat, attempted to silence it. In 2025, TikTok, Instagram, and other social media platforms were banned. For the authorities, it was a simple move. Cut the online chatter, and the protests would fade. But they underestimated a generation that had grown up online. The ban acted as a spark, igniting not just online anger, but physical mobilization. Across Kathmandu, Pokhara, Biratnagar, and smaller towns, youth flooded the streets. What had begun with memes and hashtags became a real-world uprising. 19 lives were tragically lost in the clashes, but the protests only grew stronger, more organized, and more determined. This was a protest unlike any before. It was not led by politicians or organizations. It was driven by the youth themselves. Students, graduates, young workers, ordinary citizens in extraordinary numbers. They had grown up with technology and education, yet faced a system that offered them little opportunity. Their message was simple: dignity, justice, and accountability. No longer willing to accept corruption, nepotism, and inequality, they demanded transparency at every level of governance. And in doing so, they were redefining activism in Nepal. The movement faced immediate resistance. Police barricades, tear gas, arrests, and intimidation attempted to suppress the uprising. But Gen Z had learned to adapt. Every protest was recorded, every incident broadcast online in real time. No longer could authorities control the narrative. Even when the government denied reports, videos circulated showing the scale and determination of the youth movement. It became a generational clash, the entrenched powers used to silence and compliance, versus a new generation demanding change. Each confrontation exposed a deeper truth. The system was failing the people it claimed to serve. This generation fought smart. They combined traditional protest with digital strategy. Encrypted chats, coordinated marches, live streams captured the truth, and viral content amplified their voices internationally. Youth networks spread across cities, linking small villages to the capital. What could have been chaotic became disciplined, with leaders emerging organically from within communities. The movement was decentralized, yet unified. Each chant, each march, each social media post contributed to a narrative bigger than any one individual. It was about a nation demanding its future back. The world began to notice. International media highlighted the protests, the social media ban, and the courage of Nepal's youth. Foreign observers marveled at how a generation armed only with creativity, determination, and digital tools could challenge entrenched power. For Gen Z, this attention was not about fame, it was about accountability. Every eye on Nepal was a reminder to authorities. The world was watching, and silence was no longer an option. The protests revealed more than anger, they revealed potential. Nepal's Gen Z is not just fighting, they are imagining a new future. By a future where corruption is challenged, opportunities are created, and every citizen can have a voice. The movement continues to inspire debates on education, employment, and governance. And while the path ahead is uncertain, one truth is clear. The youth of Nepal will not accept a broken system. Their energy, their creativity, and their courage could redefine a nation. From digital hashtags to streets filled with chants, Gen Z has shown that a generation united by vision can create a force no institution can ignore. This is not the end. This is the beginning of a story that will shape Nepal for decades to come.